Hi, my name is Antoine Cole. I am author of the book Genesis Misunderstood, The 7-Day Theory. I'm here to talk about my book and read some snippets from it. The gist of my book is that Genesis chapter 1 is not about creation, but it is a prophetic metaphor that is describing 7,000 years of human history, with each day being a 1,000-year period. I'm going to start by reading from page 13, chapter 1, page 13 of my book. But beloved, be not ignorant of this one thing, that one day is with the Lord as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years as one day. 2 Peter, the 3rd chapter, verse 8. The 7 days of Genesis chapter 1 aren't 24-hour periods, but 1,000-year time frames. We must understand that this is a metaphor which is using the concept of a literal week to help us understand how God calculates time. Technically, a week can be any period of 7 days, 7 weeks, 7 months, 7 years, 7,000 years. Likewise, the same principle applies to a day. The Hebrew word for day, yom, has a definition that is not limited to a 24-hour period. According to Strong's Concordance, page 48 of the Hebrew section, yom is defined as an age, always, continually, daily, birth, each, and today. Okay, but the focus in this is that it means an age. Okay, it means an age. We're going to flip over to page 14. As Strong stated, one of the definitions of yom is age. And age is a particular time period. So a day can mean a particular time frame of history. It should be understood that the vast majority of times the word yom is used in the Bible does refer to a 24-hour period. However, if chapter 1 of Genesis is to be interpreted as 24-hour days, then that becomes problematic. Time as we know it is calculated by the relation of the earth to the luminaries. According to the physics fact book, while the earth rotates, it also moves around the sun in the interval from one day to another. The earth spins around its axis. This spinning makes the sun appear to move from east to west across the sky. This is, end of quote. This is why some ancient cultures reckon their days from one sundown to the next. Our months are based on the continuous 29 to 30 day cycle that the moon goes through. This cycle is divided into two parts: the waxing and waning moon. According to Universe Today, basically the moon orbits Earth and Earth orbits the sun, which means the moon is always half illuminated by the latter. But from our perspective here on Earth, which part of the moon is illuminated and how much changes over time. When in the waxing cycle, the moon's illumination as seen from Earth increases each day for 14 to 15 days, which culminates in a full moon. Immediately after this, the waning cycle begins with the opposite effect. Each day, the illumination decreases until it disappears and the cycle starts over. As the Earth makes one orbit around the sun, the Earth will have rotated on its axis roughly 365 times, and the moon will have gone through its cycle 12 times. This is why we have 365 days and 12 months in a year. This is what the Creator gave us to calculate time. That's very important. This is what the Creator gave us to calculate time. Here's where the problem comes in. The Bible tells us that the luminaries were not created until the 4th day. That means there were 3 days that transpired without the sun, moon, and stars. This doesn't work. This theory actually contradicts what creation attests to, that God created the luminaries for us to reckon time. Not to mention that without a sun, there could be no life of any kind on Earth, as everything would be frozen. The sun regulates the temperature of our planet. All right? That's page 15 of my book. All right. Now we're going to move on. All right. So I just want to bring that point home about there being 3 days without there being a sun, moon, and stars. Okay, that doesn't work based on that theory. Okay. Now we're going to go to chapter 5 of my book, which will be page 50. This is entitled Day 4. Okay. Now, in the Hebrew year being starting from the beginning of time up until now. This period will cover year 3001 to year 4000. Okay, in terms of secular time, this would be 970 BC to 30 AD. All right. And God said, let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and years. And let them be for lights in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth. And it was so. Genesis, the first chapter, verses 14 and 15. Okay. This millennium represents the witness of Israel to the world. All right. This period was supposed to begin a glorious 1,000-year period for the nation of Israel, as it will serve as a witness to the nations of God's truths and the blessings of being in covenant with him. Israel is represented by the moon. The moon illuminates the earth, but not like the sun. It's described as the lesser light. The moon's purpose is to give light to the earth and to help determine times and seasons. The moon is a sign of what part of a month we're in. The moon doesn't emit light, but is illuminated by its reflection of the sun. The light of the moon is always changing, depending on its relation to the sun and the earth. It is the perfect object to represent the nation of Israel. Israel's witness, which was supposed to be its light, was ever changing based on its relationship with the sun. Going over to page 51. 970 BC began the reign of King Solomon over a united kingdom of Israel. Solomon's kingdom is a foreshadow of the kingdom of Christ. The entire fourth day was supposed to foreshadow the millennial reign of Christ. There are so many similarities. Solomon, like Christ, inherits a kingdom from his father during a time of peace. Both have rivals who usurp the throne prior to their reigns. Antichrist before Christ's reign and Adonijah before Solomon's reign. Both are tasked by their fathers to eliminate enemies at the start of their reigns. David gave instructions to Solomon before he died on his deathbed to deal with his enemies, one of them being Joab. And of course, we know when Christ comes back, he's going to eliminate God's enemies from the earth. All right. Solomon's reign was the most glorious reign of any king of Israel. His fame was known around the world. By this time, Israel was firmly entrenched as one of the leading nations of that time period, as well as in that region. Okay. All right, I'm going to flip on over to page 57 of my book. Okay, I'm just reading snippets. From 970 to 63 BC, the nation of Israel, just like the light of the moon, fluctuated in its witness to the world. As the moon was not meant to totally illuminate the earth, but give just enough light to prevent total darkness, Israel was not meant to totally eliminate spiritual darkness, but to give just enough spiritual light until the coming of the sun, the S-U-N, the sun being a metaphor of the Son of God, Christ. We're not talking about sun worship. All right. From its zenith under Solomon and its many revivals under good kings such as Asa, Jehoshaphat, Uzziah, Hezekiah, Josiah, and the prophets that assisted them, the light of God's people shined the way God intended. Unfortunately for them, as the moon is sometimes not in position to reflect the fullness of the sun's light, God's people were often not in position spiritually to do the same. Eventually, no matter how much light the moon provides, it gives way to the appearing and direct light of the sun. As the moon is a metaphor for Israel, the sun is also a metaphor for the Christ. But unto you that fear my name shall the Son of righteousness arise with healing in his wings, and ye shall go forth and grow up as calves of the stall. This is Malachi, the 4th chapter, verse 2. It uses the word S-U-N, Son, the S-U-N of righteousness. But of course, we know it's not talking about the sun. This is a metaphor, okay? All right, we're going to flip on over to page 59. The sun sustains all natural life on earth and is the perfect metaphor for Christ, who sustains and holds all things together. He is the exact living image, the essential manifestation of the unseen God, the visible representation of the invisible, the firstborn, the preeminent one, the sovereign and the originator of all creation. For by him all things were created in heaven and on earth, things visible and invisible, whether thrones or dominions or rulers or authorities. All things were created and exist through him, that is, by his activity, and for him. And he himself existed and is before all things, and in him all things hold together. He is the controlling, cohesive force of the universe. This is Colossians, the 1st chapter, verses 15 through 17, the amplified version of the Bible. All right. Each day there is this is page 60. Each day there is an appointed time for the sun to appear. The sun always precedes the moon. Like the sun, Christ had an appointed time to come. Genesis, the 1st chapter, verse 14 lets us know that Christ was not to come until the 4th millennial, the fourth day. In fact, the start of his ministry, which was 27 AD, to his resurrection, closed out the 4th millennial. If that had been necessary, Christ would have had to die again and again ever since the world began. But now, once for all time, he has appeared at the end of the age to remove sin by his own death as a sacrifice. Hebrews 9 and 26. This is the New Living Translation. Now, I personally like the King James Version. Most of the scriptures that I use are from the King James Version, but sometimes I like using other translations because I think sometimes they drive the point home a little bit better than the King James Version. All right. But this scripture is talking about, it says that Christ came at the end of the age. Like, what does that mean? We're talking about the end of, or better yet, the King James Version says that he came at the end of the world. But this particular scripture said he came at the end of the age. Okay, what could that be talking about? Obviously, it's not talking about. Obviously, the world didn't end at that time. It's been almost 2,000 years since Christ's crucifixion, and the world has continued the way that it was. Okay, but apparently, it's talking about something else. Remember, the word day also means age. The above scripture says that Christ died at the end of the age. The King James Version uses world. I'm still on page 60. I'll repeat that again. The above scripture says that Christ died at the end of the age. King James Version uses world, to remove sin once for all time. Well, we know that his death did not bring about the end of the world in the way that the prophets foretold would happen at the second coming. So the only logical conclusion is that Christ died at the end of the 4th age, that being the 4th millennial, the 4th day. which was a culmination of everything the previous ages pointed to, that being the perfect sacrifice. Okay, the story. I'm going to go over to page 62. The story of Jesus has been told all over the world for nearly 2,000 years, from his birth, his teachings, his death, and his resurrection. The gospel of Jesus has been a light to a groping and dying world. He was sent to redeem the fallen tribes of Israel and to be a light to the nations. The last metaphor used for this day is the stars. They are a metaphor for the righteous saints. Every individual who has committed their life to serving the Lord becomes a saint. Ye are the light of the world. A city that is set on a hill cannot be hid. Let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and glorify your Father which is in heaven. Matthew 5, verses 14 and 16, King James Version. And they that be wise shall shine as the brightness of the firmament, and they that turn many to righteousness as the stars forever. Daniel, the 12th chapter, verse 3. Okay? So, in concluding this video, day number 4 of Genesis chapter 1, it's not talking about the creation of the sun, moon, and stars. This is a metaphor for Israel, Christ, and the saints. Israel represented the moon. Christ was symbolized by the sun, and the stars represented the saints. Okay? This is what this day is referring to. If you would like to read more in this chapter or read more about what the other days mean and so forth, purchase my book, Genesis Misunderstood, The 7-Day Theory. You can get this. You can purchase this on Amazon.com. It is available in both paperback as well as ebook. All right. You can also, if you'd like to contact me, my email address is Antoine Cole, ANTOINE COLE 1230 @gmail.com. God bless you.